The widow of the last Iranian Shah tells us how Tehran's Museum of Contemporary Art came about.
Farah Pahlavi lives in an apartment in Paris overlooking the Seine that is full of works of art.
I like art, and I buy especially from compatriots, painters, ladies and gentlemen who come here. And not only I admire what they have done, their sculpture, their paintings, but at the same time I'm surrounded by people that I love and they're friends, so I don't feel alone.
She and her late husband, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, fled Iran in 1979. The former empress has not only lost her country and her husband, but also 2 of her 4 children. But she hasn't lost her love of Iran.
We are a country of great culture and civilization, and we have been brought up with that culture and civilization. And I admired our past culture and civilization. At the same time, when I became, I married my husband, the king, I wanted to support the Iranian contemporary artists.
They married in 1959. At the time, Iran was widely seen as a paragon of development and modernization. It was backed by the United States, and it was opposed to the Soviet Union. Revenues from its oil industry were burgeoning. The Shah introduced social and economic reforms, but crushed any opposition with force. Meanwhile, his wife, Farah Pahlavi, championed the rights of women and promoted art.
One day I went to an exhibition of Iranian artists, and I think the idea came from there, to have a museum for Iranian artists, sculpture and painter. And also I said, why not have also foreign art, because all the rest of the world has our art in their museums. Of course, we cannot afford buying old art from the West or the East, but contemporary.
With money from the state oil company, Farah Pahlavi and her team went on a buying spree to put together a fine collection of contemporary Western art, not for herself, but for the country.
I had the pleasure of meeting some of the painters, which was interesting for me. For instance, of course, Andy Warhol, and also Salvador Dali and Henry Moore. I went to his property outside of London, and I loved his sculptures, which are in the garden.
Within a few years, they'd acquired about 3,000 works for a new Tehran Museum of Contemporary Art, which officially opened in 1977. Yet opposition to the Shah's rule was mounting. By 1979, the country was in crisis. Many considered him a puppet of the US and disliked his reform program. On February the 1st, the Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile. The Islamic Revolution was underway. The Islamic Republic was proclaimed on April the 1st. The monarchy was over.
I don't say we didn't make mistakes, of course, but there are many among those who are against. Now they say that they did a mistake. They supported Ayatollah Khomeini to come to power.
The fundamentalist anti-Western Islamist regime had the works of art locked away. Many were from the United States, the arch enemy, or were influenced by American art. The walls of the Tehran Museum of Contemporary Art are bare. The treasures are hidden, buried in the basement. A few are occasionally put on display. To see what may not be seen, you have to look at the old museum catalogue. Among the artists represented are Warhol, Dubuffet, Jackson Pollock, Picasso, and Francis Bacon.
I think that artists really must exist to give their messages to the world. And the artists are people who remain forever. If people forget the name of leaders or kings or presidents, they never forget musicians and singers and artists.
A selection of works from the museum's collection was meant to go on show here in Berlin in December, but the exhibition was cancelled. It seems disagreements between liberals and hardliners within the Iranian regime meant the necessary export licenses were never signed, and the host museum in Berlin could not wait.
The Iranian mullahs have been in power for nearly 40 years. It's hard to know what Tehran's creative community is up to, but a report shot last summer shows that despite constraints, it's thriving.
Tehran, at the foot of the Alborz Mountains, is hardly a sight for sore eyes. A concrete jungle with 12 million inhabitants. It's best explored by car. This vast, vibrant labyrinth has a pace and rhythm all its own, and an energy that captures the imagination of creative spirits.
I originally moved to Tehran to study. I suddenly found myself in this huge, chaotic, and dirty metropolis. And I thought to myself, I don't need to be president to make a change here. I can also do it as an artist.
Mehdi Radianlu is possibly Iran's best-known unknown artist. Every child recognizes his work, but hardly anyone knows his face. His enormous murals are splashed all over Tehran. Iranians call them the window to the sky, which smog often leaves looking dull and overcast. To the people of Tehran, his art is a welcome sight.
Our architecture has been lost, along with the identity of our city. And it's not something you can change in a week. The only power I had was ideas and energy to transform these ugly gray walls into a world of imagination, into my vision of a utopian city.
For 10 years, he and other artists worked for the city, turning those ugly gray walls into a riot of color.
When I was painting these walls, there were no trees here. You can see how long it...
But eventually, the artists and city administration clashed over the content of the murals.
It's like makeup. Our problem is that our urban planning is not good and wasn't good to a big and huge city like Tehran. What I did and what all, urban artists did in Iran was like, something like painkiller for Tehran. And it's not fundamental cure, it's only a pain relief for Tehran.
But the city hadn't always needed pain relief. The spectacular Golestan Palace stands out amid the uniform drabness. It was once the official residence of the Persian royal dynasty. Today, this grand building houses a museum. The Iranians are proud of their rich cultural heritage. Tehran has a love-hate relationship with its art scene. According to Mehdi, to live in Tehran is to struggle on a daily basis. But this city, with all its challenges, has always been a hub of artistic creativity. It spawned a number of famous filmmakers. Iran has a passion for cinema. Directors such as Jafar Panahi and Asghar Farhadi are known all over the world. Much of their award-winning cinema is set in Tehran.
تهران که زیر این همه ساختمون اصلا پیدا نیست.
همینه تهران. کدوم تهران؟ تهران چی؟ سخته ولی آدم تو این شهر زشت یکی رو پیدا کنه که زیبا باشه.
برو بابا. آدم میاد اینجا گم شه، نمیاد که پیدا شه.
ما که شما رو پیدا کردیم.
خب اینجا به بعد. این خوبه.
Tina Pakravan is the director of It Happened at Midnight.
این صحنه مورد علاقه منه. اصلا عشق داره شروع میشه.
احساسات داره به وجود
هر چی رنگ باشه.
It's about the relationship between a young singer and an older woman. A love defeated by an intolerant, conservative society.
برم این داماد بنده خدا غرق شده نجاتش بدم بیارمش. گناه داره. گل یا پوچ این یا این.
Like the work of so many creative artists here, Pakravan's love story is deeply rooted in Iranian culture.
It has Iranian touch because I tried to get close to the, especially to the musics and to the poems that were, you know, very nostalgic to the people here. So I put them and used them as, because he was the singer. So that's why the approach is kind of Iranian.
Film runs in Pakravan's family. In the 1950s, her father-in-law built one of the first big movie theaters in Iran. It became an institution and still is today.
It took a long time, you know, to the world to recognize what's going on in the cinema in Iran. This is a cinema country and people are cinema lovers.
But what about censorship?
You have to take care of the lines, the red lines that you have, not to pass them, because we're living in a country with the laws that we accepted it and we are working in this cinema with their permission. So we have to take care of the red lines, not to pass it.
It's a subject that all artists have to contend with here, and each one does so in his or her own way. Mehdi Radianlu makes subtle distinctions between his public and private work, between the huge murals and the art he makes in his studio.
I can't be as dark or, you know, as philosophical as my canvases on cities or walls. My works on walls, I like them to be happy because I feel responsible about my works on walls, but I don't feel same on my canvases. These are my paintings. These are my recent paintings. My gallery nowadays wanted me to move to England, but I can't, and I said no because my inspiration, especially related to my place that I'm living. I think while I'm here, I can't paint these kind of paintings. I tried before. I can't paint my favorite painting abroad. Outside through my window, you can see this landscape. It's sad, I think, because they are empty and Here's my painting.
There's always something new emerging in this giant city. But there are very specific rules and laws that artists must abide by if they wish to work. And where there are rules, there are people who try to bend them. Like this band, called Seng. The conservative Islamic Republic doesn't allow outdoor public concerts. But that doesn't stop these young musicians from testing the limits of what they can get away with.
It's the first time we've ever performed outdoors. We've always been in a room somewhere and sold tickets in advance. But now we want a more personal atmosphere.
So, is this a first?
I don't know. I've certainly never seen it before. We did it so that everyone who wanted to could take part.
Everything here is worth a try, because things are changing in Tehran, often from one day to the next.